The massive ballroom of the Harrison estate stood silent except for the gentle whir of 7-year-old Sophie's electric wheelchair as she moved between the empty tables. 24 pink and gold chairs sat perfectly arranged around tables decorated with princess-themed centerpieces that sparkled under the crystal chandelier. The 3-tier unicorn cake stood untouched on its silver stand, its candles unlit, waiting for guests who would never arrive. Sophie's father, Daniel Harrison, checked his platinum watch for what felt like the 100th time that afternoon. As the CEO of Harrison Technologies, one of the most successful tech companies on the West Coast, he was used to people arriving early to his events, eager to impress him. But today, 2 hours after Sophie's birthday party was supposed to start, not a single child had walked through those ornate double doors. The professional magician he had hired for $2,000 was packing up his equipment. Shaking his head sympathetically, the face painter had already left after an hour of waiting. The bouncy castle in the backyard remained deflated and unused. Sophie wheeled herself to the massive floor-to-ceiling window that overlooked their manicured garden and the street beyond. Her small hands gripped the wheels of her custom-made pink wheelchair, the one Daniel had specially ordered from Switzerland after the car accident that had taken her mother's life and left Sophie paralyzed from the waist down 18 months ago. "Daddy?" Sophie's voice was barely a whisper, but it cut through Daniel's heart like a knife. "Why doesn't anybody want to come to my party? Is it because I can't walk anymore?" Daniel felt his throat tighten as he knelt beside his daughter's wheelchair, taking her tiny hand in his. "No, sweetheart. They're just ... They must be busy. You know how weekends can be." But even as he spoke the words, he knew they were lies. The truth was much crueler. Ever since Sophie's accident, the other wealthy families in their exclusive Hillcrest neighborhood had gradually distanced themselves. At first, there had been flowers and sympathy cards. But as Sophie's condition became permanent, as it became clear she would never walk again, the invitations to playdates stopped coming. The mothers at the private school would smile politely, but always had excuses when Daniel tried to arrange friendships for Sophie. Just then, the doorbell rang, its melodious chime echoing through the empty house. Daniel practically ran to the door, his expensive Italian shoes clicking against the marble floor. His heart lifted with hope that finally someone had decided to show up for his little girl. But when he opened the heavy oak door, his prepared smile faltered. Standing on his doorstep was a young black boy, maybe 8 or 9 years old, wearing a faded Spider-Man t-shirt that had seen better days and jeans with patches on the knees. His sneakers were clean but clearly well-worn, with duct tape holding one sole in place. Behind him, at the end of the long driveway, Daniel could see the public bus stop where the boy must have gotten off. "Hello, sir," the boy said politely, his dark eyes bright with sincerity. "My name is Marcus. I heard there was a birthday party here today. I know I don't have an invitation, but I saw all the decorations from the bus window, and I thought maybe the birthday kid could use a friend." Daniel stood frozen, unsure how to respond. This child clearly didn't belong to any of the wealthy families in Hillcrest. In fact, Daniel realized with a start, the boy must live in the Riverside district, the working-class neighborhood on the other side of the highway that divided their city like an invisible wall. "I don't have a present," Marcus continued honestly, pulling something from his pocket. "But I made this friendship bracelet. My grandma taught me how. She says the best gifts come from the heart, not from stores." He held up a simple bracelet made of colorful threads woven together in an intricate pattern. It wasn't much to look at compared to the expensive gifts that sat unopened on the gift table, all sent by parents who couldn't be bothered to bring their children. But there was something about the careful craftsmanship, the obvious time and effort that had gone into making it, that made it precious. Before Daniel could find his voice, he heard the familiar whir of Sophie's wheelchair behind him. "Daddy?" "Who is it?" Sophie asked, wheeling herself into view. When she saw Marcus, her face lit up with curiosity. Marcus's eyes went to the wheelchair. But instead of the discomfort or pity that Daniel had seen in so many adults' faces, the boy's expression remained warm and open. "Hi, you must be the birthday girl. I'm Marcus." "Happy birthday." He held out the bracelet to her. "I made this for you. See? The colors are pink and purple and blue, just like the balloons I saw in your window." Sophie's face transformed with the first genuine smile Daniel had seen in weeks. "You made this just for me, but you don't even know me." Marcus shrugged with the simple wisdom that children sometimes possess. "My grandma always says you don't need to know someone to be kind to them. And everyone deserves to have friends." At their birthday party, Daniel watched in amazement as Sophie immediately put on the bracelet, admiring how it looked on her wrist. "It's beautiful. Do you want to come in? We have so much cake. And there's a bouncy castle, though I can't really use it anymore, but you could." Marcus looked up at Daniel, asking permission with his eyes. Daniel found himself nodding, stepping aside to let the boy in. "Please, come in, Marcus. Sophie would love to have you at her party." As Marcus walked into the grand foyer, his eyes widened at the marble floors, the sweeping staircase, the chandelier that probably cost more than his family made in a year. But he didn't seem intimidated. Instead, he turned to Sophie with genuine excitement. "Wow, your house is like a castle. Are you a princess?" Sophie giggled, a sound that filled Daniel's heart with unexpected joy. "I wish, but I can't be a real princess because princesses in stories can always walk and dance." Marcus tilted his head thoughtfully, considering this. "That's not true. My grandma told me stories about a princess who was the wisest in all the land because she had to see the world differently from her special throne with wheels. She could solve problems nobody else could because she understood things others didn't. Maybe you're that kind of princess." Sophie's eyes grew wide with wonder. "Really? There's a story like that?" Marcus nodded enthusiastically. "My grandma knows all the best stories. She had to use a wheelchair for a while after she hurt her hip, and she said it taught her that there's more than one way to move through the world. Some people walk, some people roll, some people run, and some people fly in their imagination. What matters is where your heart wants to go." The afternoon that followed was nothing short of magical. Marcus didn't just attend Sophie's party. He transformed it into an adventure. He insisted on pushing Sophie's wheelchair as they raced through the gardens, both of them laughing as they pretended to be race car drivers. He helped her blow out her candles, making sure she got to make an extra wish because birthday girls in wheelchairs get bonus wishes. Everyone knows that. He even convinced the reluctant magician to stay and perform, becoming his enthusiastic assistant and making Sophie laugh with his comedic mishaps. When they played games, Marcus adapted each one so Sophie could participate fully. Pin the tail on the donkey became a game where Sophie directed Marcus verbally while he wore a blindfold. Musical chairs became musical wheels, where Marcus would run and Sophie would race in her chair, both trying to reach designated spots when the music stopped. Daniel watched from the patio, his heart swelling with emotions he couldn't quite name. This child, this stranger from across the city's divide, had given his daughter something all of Daniel's money couldn't buy: the simple gift of being seen as a child first, not as a disability. He thought about all the other parents, his supposed friends and business associates who had made excuses. Victoria has a violin recital. Charles has a soccer game. Madison is feeling under the weather. All lies to avoid the discomfort of explaining to their children why Sophie was different now. His phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Jennifer Whitman, the head of the Parent Association at Sophie's exclusive private school. "Well, Daniel, I heard you've allowed a certain element into your home. I hope you're being careful. These people often take advantage of situations like yours, especially given Sophie's vulnerable condition. Daniel felt his blood boil. He looked through the window where Marcus was now teaching Sophie a complicated handshake that involved lots of giggling when they got it wrong. He typed back, "The only element in my home is kindness, Jennifer. Something your children could learn about if you hadn't raised them to be as shallow as you are." His phone immediately rang. Jennifer's shrill voice filled his ear. "Daniel." "Harrison, how dare you speak to me that way? Do you have any idea who you're talking to?" "Yes," Daniel replied calmly. "I'm talking to someone who would rather let a 7-year-old girl spend her birthday alone than expose her precious children to the reality that not everyone in the world is exactly like them. That boy is from Riverside, Daniel. Those people have different values, different backgrounds. You're exposing Sophie to influences you can't possibly understand." Daniel walked further into the garden, not wanting the children to hear. "Jennifer, that boy has shown more values in 2 hours than your family has shown in the entire year since Sophie's accident. When was the last time Victoria asked to play with Sophie? When was the last time you even acknowledged my daughter exists?" There was a pause. "Daniel, we have to think about what's best for our children. Sophie's situation is unfortunate, but we can't let emotion cloud our judgment about appropriate associations." Appropriate associations. Daniel's voice rose. "My daughter is 7 years old, Jennifer. She just wanted friends at her birthday party. And the only child in this entire city who cared enough to show up was a boy from the wrong neighborhood who made her a bracelet with his own hands because he couldn't afford to buy a gift." Meanwhile, Marcus and Sophie had moved to the art station that had been set up for the party that never was. Marcus was teaching Sophie how to make friendship bracelets like the one he'd given her. "See, you take 3 colors that mean something special," Marcus explained patiently. "I'm going to use green for hope, yellow for sunshine, and orange for courage. What colors do you want?" Sophie studied the threads seriously. "Purple for my mom, because that was her favorite color. Blue for my dad, because he always wears blue ties. And red for my new friend, because you're wearing red shoes." Marcus beamed. "That's perfect. Now, the secret is to keep the tension just right. Not too tight or it'll break. Not too loose or it'll fall apart. Kind of like friendships, my grandma says." As they worked, Sophie asked quietly, "Marcus, do the kids at your school ever make fun of you?" Marcus nodded slowly. "Sometimes. Because my clothes aren't new, or because I bring sandwiches instead of buying lunch, or because my dad works at night cleaning offices instead of in an office during the day. But my grandma says that people who judge you for things you can't control are telling you something important about themselves, not about you." Sophie twisted a thread thoughtfully. "The kids at my school used to play with me all the time. But after my accident, they act like I'm made of glass. Or like being in a wheelchair might be contagious. Their parents tell them to be nice to poor Sophie, but they don't really want to be my friend anymore." Marcus stopped braiding and looked at her seriously. "You know what? Those aren't real friends then. Real friends don't care if you walk, or roll, or fly. They just care that you're you. My best friend at school, James, he has something called autism. Some kids don't understand why he does things differently, but I think the way he sees the world is like having superpowers. He notices things nobody else does. Maybe your wheelchair is like that too. Maybe it helps you see who people really are." Sophie smiled, a tear rolling down her cheek. "I never thought of it that way. Plus," Marcus added with a grin, "wheelchairs are pretty cool. You never have to worry about getting tired feet, and you can probably go super fast downhill." Sophie laughed, wiping her tear. "Want to see how fast I can go?" And with that, they were off again. racing through the house with Daniel calling out half-hearted warnings about being careful that he didn't really mean as the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold that matched Sophie's party decorations. Daniel realized it was getting late. Marcus would need to get home before dark. "Marcus," Daniel said, approaching the children who were now sharing the birthday cake, chocolate frosting on both their faces, "I should drive you home. It's getting late." Marcus shook his head. "That's okay, Mr. Harrison. The bus runs until 9, and I know the route real well. My grandma will be waiting at the stop near our apartment." Daniel insisted, "Please, let me drive you. It's the least I can do. You saved my daughter's birthday." Marcus looked uncertain. "You don't have to come to our neighborhood, sir. It's not like here." "I want to," Daniel said firmly. "And I want to meet your grandmother and thank her for raising such an extraordinary young man." The drive to Riverside was like entering a different world. The pristine lawns and mansion-style homes gave way to apartment buildings with laundry hanging from balconies, streets where kids played basketball using milk crates as hoops, and corner stores with bars on the windows. But Daniel also saw something else: neighbors talking on stoops, families barbecuing together in small yards, and a sense of community that he realized had been missing from his own exclusive neighborhood. Marcus directed him to a modest apartment building where an elderly black woman sat on the front steps, her face creased with worry that transformed into relief when she saw Marcus emerge from Daniel's luxury SUV. "Grandma." Marcus ran to her. "This is Sophie's dad, Mr. Harrison." "Sophie's?" "The birthday girl I told you about this morning, the one whose party I wanted to go to." The woman stood slowly, with the dignity of someone who had lived through struggles Daniel could only imagine. "Mr. Harrison," she said, extending a weathered hand. "I'm Grace Thompson. I hope Marcus wasn't any trouble." "Mrs. Thompson," Daniel said, taking her hand with genuine respect. "Your grandson saved my daughter's birthday. More than that, he reminded both of us what real kindness looks like." Grace studied Daniel's face, then nodded slowly. Marcus has always had a gift for seeing people's hearts instead of their circumstances. Gets that from his late mother. Sophie, who had insisted on coming along, wheeled herself forward. "Mrs. Thompson, Marcus told me you know stories about princesses in wheelchairs. Is that true?" Grace's face softened as she looked at Sophie. "Oh, child, I know all kinds of stories. Stories about people who found strength in what others called weakness. Would you like to hear them sometime?" Sophie nodded eagerly. "Could Marcus come play again? He's my best friend now." Grace and Daniel exchanged glances, both understanding the bridge that was being built between their two worlds. "If your father agrees," Grace said carefully. Daniel didn't hesitate. "Marcus is welcome at our home any time. In fact, I was hoping we could make this a regular thing. Sophie hasn't been this happy in over a year." But their conversation was interrupted by the sound of expensive cars pulling up. Daniel turned to see several vehicles he recognized: Jennifer Whitman's white Mercedes, Robert Ashford's black BMW, and Patricia Coleman's silver Lexus. The heads of the parent association had apparently followed him here. Jennifer emerged from her car, her face a mask of disapproval. "Daniel, we need to talk. When you didn't answer your phone, I checked your location. What are you thinking, bringing Sophie to this neighborhood?" Robert Ashford joined her, his voice dripping with condescension. "Daniel, we understand you're going through a difficult time with Sophie's condition, but this isn't the answer. Associating with ... these people is not going to help her situation." Patricia Coleman, clutching her designer purse like a shield, added, "There are proper channels for charity. Daniel, writing a check is one thing, but personal involvement. Think about the message you're sending." Grace stepped forward, her dignity unshaken by their arrival. The message he's sending is that kindness doesn't have a zip code, and friendship doesn't have a color. Jennifer laughed, a cruel sound that made Sophie flinch. Please, we all know what this is really about. You saw an opportunity with a vulnerable family, and you took it. Marcus, his young face flushed with anger, spoke up. My grandma didn't even want me to go. I saw the balloons from the bus, and I asked her if I could try to go to the party because I know what it feels like to be alone on your birthday. She gave me bus money from her grocery budget so I could try to make a friend. Daniel felt something shift inside him, a clarity he hadn't experienced in years. Jennifer, Robert, Patricia, I want you to listen very carefully. My daughter sat alone in a room full of decorations for 2 hours today because not one of your children showed up. Not one. You want to talk about taking advantage? Let's talk about how all of you have taken advantage of my business connections, my charity donations, my networking events. But when my 7-year-old daughter needed friends, you treated her like she was contagious. He pulled Sophie's wheelchair closer to him protectively. This boy, who you seem so eager to dismiss, gave my daughter something none of your children could: genuine friendship without conditions. He didn't see a wheelchair or a disability. He saw a little girl who needed a friend. Jennifer's face reddened. Daniel, you're being emotional. You need to think about Sophie's future, her place in society, her place in society. Daniel's voice rose. What about her place as a happy child? What about her right to have friends who value her for who she is, not what her father's bank account looks like? Grace placed a gentle hand on Daniel's arm, calming him. She turned to the 3 parents with quiet authority. I've cleaned houses in your neighborhood for 30 years. I've seen your children grow up, heard your conversations when you thought I wasn't listening. You teach them that worth comes from wealth, that value comes from appearance. But let me tell you something. I've raised 4 grandchildren after their parents died, and every one of them knows that the measure of a person isn't in their wallet, but in their willingness to extend a hand to someone who needs it. Robert Ashford scoffed. Spare us the sermon. We're talking about protecting our children's futures. From what? Marcus asked with the innocent directness only a child could manage. From being friends with Sophie because she's in a wheelchair? Or from being friends with me because I'm black and poor? The silence that followed was deafening. Even the evening. Traffic seemed to pause, waiting for an answer that wouldn't come. Sophie, who had been quiet through the confrontation, finally spoke. I don't want to be protected from Marcus. He's the only kid who played with me like I was normal. He made up games I could play. He shared his sandwich with me even though I had tons of food. And he taught me that being different isn't bad. It's just different. Patricia Coleman tried one last appeal to what she thought mattered. Daniel, think about what this association will do to your business relationships. The country club, the networking. Daniel laughed, a free sound that seemed to surprise everyone, including himself. You know what, Patricia? I don't care. I've spent so much time worrying about maintaining relationships with people who abandoned my daughter when she needed them most. What kind of father does that make me? What kind of example am I setting? He looked down at Sophie, then at Marcus, and finally at Grace. Mrs. Thompson, would you and Marcus like to join us for dinner? I know a great pizza place that delivers, and I think these kids have a birthday to finish celebrating. Grace smiled, the expression transforming her tired face. We'd be honored, Mr. Harrison. As they turned to leave, Jennifer called out desperately. Daniel, if you do this, if you continue this association, there will be consequences. The school, the club, the business connections. Daniel turned back one last time. Jennifer, the only consequence I care about is my daughter's happiness. And today, for the first time since her mother died, she's truly happy. If you and the others can't understand that, then you're the ones who are truly disabled. You're disabled by prejudice, by fear, and by a complete inability to see the value in people who don't look like you. The weeks that followed brought exactly the consequences Jennifer had threatened. Sophie's invitation to Victoria Whitman's pool party was mysteriously lost. The country club began finding issues with Daniel's membership renewal. Several business associates suddenly had conflicts that prevented them from attending his company's quarterly meeting. But for every door that closed, another unexpected one opened. Marcus came over every weekend, and soon he was bringing his friend James, the boy with autism he had mentioned. James, it turned out, was brilliant with computers and taught Sophie coding games she could play despite her limited mobility. Other families from Riverside, hearing about the friendship through Grace's church, began reaching out. Sophie's birthday party the following month was filled with children of all backgrounds, all abilities, all colors, a beautiful mosaic of humanity that the Hillcrest elite could never have imagined. Daniel's business, rather than suffering, evolved in unexpected ways. He began partnering with community organizations, hiring from overlooked populations, and found that diversity brought innovation his company had been missing. His new head of development was a young woman from Riverside who had gone to community college while caring for her disabled brother. She brought insights about accessible technology that opened entire new markets Daniel had never considered. Grace became a regular fixture in their lives, sharing her wisdom and stories. She taught Sophie that strength wasn't about standing tall, but about standing up for what's right, even from a seated position. She taught Daniel that the walls he'd built to protect his wealth had also walled out life's most precious experiences. One evening, 6 months after that fateful birthday, Daniel found Sophie and Marcus in the garden. They had built a ramp out of plywood and were taking turns, Marcus on his skateboard and Sophie in her wheelchair, seeing who could get the most air. It was dangerous, probably foolish, and absolutely perfect. "Careful," he called out, but his heart wasn't in the warning. How could he tell them to be careful when their fearlessness had taught him to be brave? His phone rang. It was Jennifer Whitman. He almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. "Daniel," she said, her voice different, smaller than he remembered. "I wanted to... Victoria has been asking about Sophie. She misses her. She says the new friends at school aren't real friends. They're just kids whose parents make them play together." Daniel felt a mix of satisfaction and pity. "What do you want, Jennifer?" "I was wrong," she said, the words clearly difficult for her. "I drove by your house last week and saw all those children playing in your yard. They were all so... happy. Victoria saw it too. She cried because she wasn't invited." "Sophie doesn't send invitations based on zip codes," Daniel replied, "but she also doesn't exclude anyone. If Victoria wants to come play, really play, without any prejudice or conditions, she's welcome." There was a pause. "Even after everything." "Sophie has a bigger heart than I do," Daniel admitted, watching his daughter pop a wheelie in her chair while Marcus cheered. "She believes in second chances." "But Jennifer, this isn't about charity or reaching down to help the less fortunate. If Victoria comes, she comes as an equal, to learn as much as she teaches, to receive as much as she gives." After the call ended, Daniel walked to the garden where the children were now lying on the grass, looking at clouds. "That one looks like a dragon." Marcus pointed. "No, it's clearly a butterfly," Sophie argued. "With fire breath, obviously. Fire-breathing butterflies are totally a thing." They dissolved into giggles, and Daniel realized this was what he'd been missing all along. Not the careful, orchestrated playdates of the elite, but the genuine, messy, beautiful chaos of real childhood friendship. Grace appeared beside him, having let herself in as she always did now. "You did a good thing, Mr. Harrison, letting them find each other." "They saved each other," Daniel corrected. Marcus saved Sophie from loneliness, And Sophie saved Marcus from a world that was trying to tell him he wasn't good enough. Grace nodded wisely. And they both saved you from becoming the kind of man who would choose comfort over compassion. She was right. Daniel thought about the man he'd been before. Marcus rang his doorbell. Successful, wealthy, but ultimately hollow. He'd been so focused on maintaining his position in society that he'd forgotten what society was supposed to be about: community, connection, and care for one another. "Mrs. Thompson," he said suddenly, "I've been thinking. There are probably a lot of kids like Sophie who need friends, and a lot of kids like Marcus who have love to give but no opportunity to share it. What if we started something? A program that brings together children from different backgrounds, different abilities, different neighborhoods." Grace's eyes lit up. "You mean like a bridge between worlds that don't usually meet?" "Exactly. We could call it the birthday bridge because it all started with a birthday party where only one child showed up, but that one child changed everything." Within a year, the birthday bridge had become a citywide initiative. It paired children from different neighborhoods for monthly gatherings, shared activities, and genuine friendships. The program didn't just change the children's lives. It transformed entire families. Parents who had never spoken despite living in the same city for decades found themselves sharing coffee and stories. Prejudices that had seemed immovable crumbled. In the face of children's laughter, Sophie became the program's youngest spokesperson. Her wheelchair no longer a symbol of limitation, but of determination. She would tell audiences, "My friend Marcus taught me that walking isn't the only way to move forward. Sometimes you roll, sometimes you're carried by friends, and sometimes you fly on the wings of kindness." Marcus, now 10 years old, would add his own wisdom. "My grandma always says that birthdays aren't just about getting older, they're about getting better." Sophie's 7th birthday was when we all got better. Better at seeing people, better at being friends, better at understanding. That different isn't wrong, it's just different. The program caught national attention when a documentary filmmaker heard about it. The film, titled The Birthday Boy, followed Marcus and Sophie's friendship over 2 years, showing how one act of kindness had rippled out to transform an entire city. At the premiere, held in the Riverside Community Center rather than a fancy downtown theater, Jennifer Whitman approached Daniel. She had changed dramatically over the past 2 years, her designer clothes replaced with simple, practical attire. Her harsh expression softened by genuine emotion. "Daniel, I need to thank you, and Marcus, and especially Sophie. Victoria is a different child now. Kinder, more empathetic, more real. The friends she's made through the birthday bridge are the first authentic relationships she's ever had." Daniel accepted her thanks graciously, but his attention was on the stage where Sophie and Marcus were preparing to speak. Sophie, now 9, had grown confident and articulate. Her wheelchair was decorated with stickers from all the places the birthday bridge had taken her. Marcus, 11 and growing tall, stood beside her with the same warm smile that had appeared at their door 3 years ago. "No one went to the CEO's paralyzed daughter's birthday," Sophie began, her clear voice carrying across the room until a black boy said, "Can I?" That question changed my life. Not because Marcus gave me a party, but because he gave me something much more valuable: the knowledge that real friendship doesn't see wheelchairs or wealth or color. It just sees a person who might need a friend. Marcus took the microphone. "People ask me why I went to that party without an invitation. The truth is, I did have an invitation. It was written in the balloons I saw from the bus, in the empty cars in the driveway, in the sadness I imagined behind those big windows." Sometimes the biggest invitations don't come on fancy paper. They come from recognizing when someone needs exactly what you have to give, even if all you have is yourself. The audience erupted in applause, but Daniel barely heard it. He was remembering that afternoon 3 years ago when he thought his daughter's world was ending. He couldn't have imagined then that the empty party would become the fullest experience of their lives, that the absence of shallow friendships would make room for deep ones, that a boy from across the city divide would become the bridge to a better world. As the event ended and people began to mingle, Daniel overheard two children talking. One was from Hillcrest, the other from Riverside. "My mom used to say I couldn't play with kids from your neighborhood," the first child said. "What does she say now?" asked the second. "She says she was wrong. She says Marcus and Sophie taught everyone that being different isn't something to be afraid of. It's something to celebrate." The second child grinned. "My grandpa says the same thing. He says the day Marcus went to that birthday party was the day our whole city started learning how to be neighbors instead of strangers." Daniel smiled, watching Sophie and Marcus demonstrating their elaborate handshake to a group of fascinated younger children. The handshake had evolved over the years, becoming increasingly complex, but its meaning remained simple. Friendship has no boundaries. Later that evening, as Daniel drove Sophie home, Marcus was spending the night as he did most Fridays. Sophie said something that crystallized everything they'd learned. "Dad, remember when I asked why nobody came to my party?" "I remember, sweetheart. I'm glad they didn't come. If they had, there wouldn't have been room for Marcus. And without Marcus, I wouldn't have learned that the best friends aren't the ones everyone expects you to have, but the ones who show up when no one expects them to." Daniel reached back to squeeze her hand, his eyes misty. "You know what the most amazing part is?" he asked. "What, Dad?" "Marcus didn't just show up for your birthday. He showed up for your life. Because he did, we all learned to show up for each other." As they pulled into their driveway, the Harrison house looked different than it had 3 years ago. The perfectly manicured lawn now had a wheelchair-accessible playground. The formal garden had been replaced with a community vegetable patch that families from both neighborhoods tended together. The imposing gates that once separated them from the world now stood permanently open, welcoming anyone who wanted to enter. Marcus's grandmother, Grace, was waiting on the porch, as she often did on Friday evenings. She had become the grandmother Sophie never had, the mother Daniel had lost, and the wisdom keeper of their extended, unconventional family. "How was the premiere?" she asked. "Perfect," Sophie said, wheeling up the ramp Marcus and his friends had built last summer. We told our story, and people listened. Really listened. Grace nodded approvingly. "Stories have power, child. Your story has the power to change hearts because it's true. It shows that love doesn't count chromosomes or check bank accounts. Love just loves." As they gathered around the dinner table, a tradition that now included not just Marcus and Makas, and Makas and Makas and Melis, and Melis QIs and love, and leaves a rich, long-lasting color. It shows that love doesn't count. Makas, you say, don't love. Maka, Meles. Cod. Meles, 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 Melas. Lev, it sees. By my lies. Where Kayat, by Meles, the exide, Cad, Akata to my clay Bekagred, Kamisit, Kalisa Kimcrete, Kakakikits, and to it, sit peace and a kick sit with the big dose, sit stick. Grace, but James, Victoria, and several other children from the Birthday Bridge program. Daniel reflected on the journey. 3 years ago, he had been a successful but lonely man raising a disabled daughter in a world that seemed determined to exclude her. Today, he was part of a community that had redefined what family meant, what friendship meant, what success meant. The doorbell rang, and Sophie laughed. "Someone's late for dinner." Marcus ran to answer it, and Daniel heard the excited voices of more children arriving. This was their Friday tradition, now an open table where anyone could come, where the only requirement was kindness as the evening wore on. Filled with laughter, stories, and the chaos of children from different worlds becoming one family, Daniel caught Grace's eye. She smiled knowingly, and he understood what she was thinking. Sometimes the worst moments, an empty birthday party, a child's tears, the cruel rejection of society become the catalysts for the best transformations. The empty chairs at Sophie's 7th birthday had made room for something bigger than a party. They had made room for a revolution of kindness that started with 5 simple words from a brave little boy. "Can I join you?" Years later, when Sophie would graduate from high school as valedictorian, she would tell the story again. When Marcus would receive a full scholarship to university, he would tell it too. When the Birthday Bridge program expanded nationwide, touching millions of children's lives, the story would be told in countless variations. But it always came back to the same truth. One child's kindness had exposed the smallness of prejudice and the greatness of hearts willing to open. One empty party had become full of more love than 100 exclusive gatherings could have held. And 2 children from different worlds had proven that the only real disability in life is the inability to see the humanity in others. No one went to the CEO's paralyzed daughter's birthday. Sophie would always begin when telling the story, until a black boy said, "Can I?" And that question didn't just change a party. It changed our world. The Birthday Bridge program now operates in all 50 states, bringing together children who might never have met otherwise. Every gathering begins with the same reminder. Every empty chair is an opportunity for an unexpected friend. Every difference is a chance to grow. Every act of kindness is a bridge to a better tomorrow. Daniel Harrison still runs his tech company, but his definition of success has completely changed. Profits are measured not just in dollars, but in the diversity of his workforce. Achievement is counted not just in market share, but in community impact. And wealth is calculated not in stock options, but in the richness of relationships that cross every barrier society tries to erect. Marcus Thompson graduated from law school and now works as a civil rights attorney, fighting for the rights of disabled children and against discrimination in all its forms. He keeps Sophie's first birthday card to him framed in his office, a crayon drawing of 2 friends, one standing, one sitting, holding hands under a rainbow. Sophie Harrison became a pediatric psychologist specializing in helping children with disabilities and their families navigate a world that often doesn't understand them. Her office is decorated with photos from Birthday Bridge gatherings, and she still wears the friendship bracelet Marcus made her. Now reinforced with stronger thread, but still bearing the original pattern. In her desk drawer, she keeps a list of every child who came to her parties after that empty 7th birthday. Hundreds of names from every background imaginable. Proof that when one door closes, sometimes an entire house of doors opens instead.